Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel here. Hope you guys are all having a great weekend here and you guys are enjoying yourselves here. We got another video for you here. As you can see from the thumbnail and kind of the tabs I got pulled up and everything here, we have PlayStation 5 or just PlayStation in general versus Xbox. Obviously, with this being the new generation, it's PlayStation 5 and its little iterations and different versions versus the Xbox Series X and S and its different iterations too, I guess. But yeah, so we're basically just going to be going over my thoughts and opinions on the two different, ecosystems and consoles, kind of giving you guys my opinions and thoughts on, which one not necessarily is better, but which one may be better for some people or fill more needs that you are looking for depending on, what you are looking for there, and kind of just comparing and contrasting the two and kind of going over the strengths and weaknesses and everything of the two different systems here for console gaming. Of course, there is Nintendo with the Switch, but that seems to be at the end of its lifespan, not kind of in the middle-ish, maybe a tad bit less in the middle, like these. And it's kind of a different system as a whole, honestly. These two obviously are the main two competitors and the main two iterations of the console, or you could say. So this is what we're going to be focusing on here. So yeah, we got PlayStation pulled up, we've got Xbox pulled up. We've got a couple different, just general website pages pulled up as well. And kind of let's just go and compare and contrast here. So I'm going to be focusing mainly not only just on the console, but also just the ecosystem that surrounds it and supports it. Because at the end of the day, the actual hardware, the console itself, while definitely a factor in deciding which one you might want to actually buy, because one might be less or more performing and more powerful, or one may be cheaper or more expensive, of course. Those should be considerations you make, but those shouldn't really be the main consideration, in my opinion, as to whether you choose to go with PlayStation ecosystem or the Xbox ecosystem here. Because at the end of the day, these consoles, being the current gen consoles that they are going to play the games that they can play. They're going to be everything is going to be made with these consoles in mind, and obviously some are going to be able a little crisper and be able to perform a little better than others. But at the end of the day, they're all going to give you a solid performance and solid gameplay of virtually every game that ever comes to console, because these games are developed with these consoles in mind to be able to play on these consoles. So it's really don't worry about the machine. Is this going to be able to perform, or is it going to be able to play the games I want to play? Is it going to look okay? Anything from the Series S, which is probably the weakest console of the bunch we're going to talk about today, all the way up to the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 Pro, are going to be able to play these games, and they're all going to do a pretty good job at it. So, well, yes, one may be the more expensive or more powerful console. Don't worry about that too much. Worry about more the surrounding ecosystem of the console in making your decision here. But let's get that small segment out of the way with the hardware kind of vantage point here. But yeah, PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X are obviously the two mainstay kind of flagship consoles of both of this console war sides with Xbox and Sony here. And as far as which is more powerful, of the mainstay consoles, of the flagship ones, the Xbox Series X is a slightly more powerful console. They are both, I believe, capable of ray tracing, 4K, 120 frames per second, 120 frames per second gameplay, depending on the game, of course. And both can or can't have a disk drive. You can do 4K gaming, 120 frames per second. They both have ray tracing, quick resume, and holding your games kind of in stasis. There is something, but the Xbox Series X is a slightly more powerful, but slightly more expensive than the PlayStation 5 Slim, especially with sales and stuff maybe going on or not, depending on where you are and what your situation looks like and when you're watching this. It is a slightly more expensive console though. At the same time, of course, if you're talking about expenses here, the Xbox does have the Series S console, which, as far as just baseline prices for consoles in this current generation go, I believe is the cheapest here at $300. I believe the cheapest you can get a PlayStation 5, just going to the store and picking a new one up, is about $375 on a bundle sale on holiday for the discless version of the PlayStation 5 Slim. So still saving a considerable chunk of change there if you go with the base version of the S here. Obviously, there's different iterations of both that are slightly more expensive, generally for some more storage and slight upgrades to the components in there. Nothing too massive. It's usually just the storage and disk drive that are adding prices onto both of these systems, Sony and PlayStation and Xbox's systems. That's the main difference between most of these iterations is disk drive or not, or more storage or not, with some advanced components like the PlayStation 5 Pro having a little more, power, I guess, while definitely jacking up the price a little too much, in my opinion. So yeah, so all these systems for the price point they're at, you have an option here. Again, as I said in the Series X and X review, S and X review, I believe 2 days ago now of this recording, it is, as far as cheap console get in, no hassle. I want a budget. I'm not a huge gamer. I'm casual. I like travel a lot or something like that. It's hard to beat the S as far as the hardware perspective goes. Again, it can play all of the games that you'd want to in this current console generation. It can play them, I believe, at 60 FPS or up to 120 frames per second, even at HDR, just not 4K of this generation. Obviously, it doesn't have a disk drive. It has limited storage, of course. But for the price point and what it offers, it's a great bargain, as I said in the last video I actually made. It's a pretty solid option for the casual or the gamer who travels a lot and wants console gaming still, or doesn't want or have a lot of money to spend on this. So it's really a great hardware option. PS5, if you like that ecosystem, this is probably the best deal you're going to get. You can have a disk drive or not, save about probably $50 to $90 or something. I can't remember exactly what the price points are for those. Regardless, there's good options. There is the PlayStation 5 Pro now, as I've done an entire video showcasing here, which as of right now, I believe is the most powerful console on the market. There is some games that are going to try to be PS5 Pro enhanced to try to exploit the slightly upgraded technology within this console compared to the original PlayStation 5. But as of now, it's really not incredibly great for the value that you're getting. Again, it's kind of understandable exactly why they priced it at what they did. They are giving you another terabyte of storage. They are giving you PSSR, like super resolution or spectral super resolution. They're, it's supposed to be a faster and better performing console, and it is technically speaking. But the graphics and the jump there really just aren't enough to justify upgrading or buying it at the $700 price point compared to the cheaper the original PlayStation 5 for most people. It is an interesting idea to try to make a more powerful console, but for $700, get another terabyte of storage with some upgraded components within it that don't really offer that much of a performance bump. Just really isn't worth it for most people. Not to mention, you don't even get a vertical stand or a disk drive with the PlayStation 5 Pro, even for the rather pricey price point of the PS5 Pro. So that's a little questionable in of itself as well. Going back to this. But now that we've talked a little more about the hardware offerings of both of the kind of systems here, let's get into arguably a more important system or a more important discussion here with just the ecosystem as a whole here. Obviously, both PlayStation and Xbox have systems at different price points and different performance points that really fits anybody's needs and price point. Maybe obviously the cheaper and the higher performance. Sony has the most powerful console at a kind of not a great price point. Xbox has the cheapest console that still performs pretty well compared to everything else. And then the Series X is more powerful than the PlayStation 5 on a baseline flagship console level. So yeah, that's kind of the differences there. As far as the ecosystem, which in my opinion is probably the more important and most important factor, what games and support are you going to have on Xbox versus PlayStation in this current generation here? This is where I think it really becomes not only opinionated, but depends on what you're really looking for out of a gaming experience. PlayStation obviously has kind of made their, I guess, bread and butter and selling point on the entire PlayStation 5 or PlayStation General exclusives. Their first party, the first party console exclusives here, like you see with Helldivers 2, with God of War, and God of War Ragnarok now, stuff like The Last of Us, stuff like the Horizon Zero Dawn series, um, Helldivers, I guess now Helldivers 2 is kind of probably going to become a big name for them as well, given its recent success. That is what Sony has really made its bread and butter on for a long time there, is first party console exclusives like those games I just mentioned. But recently, I will say, kind of like what Xbox does, most of those have gone, or at least eventually are ported to PC at some point. So if you're a PC gamer thinking about getting into that, that's something to consider. Is most of these console exclusives on both sides are available on PC, if they're not available on the other console, of course. So it's the veil of exclusivity is really getting pierced quite a bit in recent years, where this isn't the only place to play a lot of stuff like Helldivers 2, like God of War, like Spider-Man's, like The Last of Us, where a lot of these games have been ported to PC and are now available on different platforms for different people. If you have a PC or something, even like a Steam Deck, a lot of these games still are playable. So that's something to take into consideration. But of course, PlayStation 5 has always prided itself on these exclusives that you cannot play on the Xbox if you're a console-only gamer. You won't have access to Helldivers 2, to God of War, to Spider-Man, to The Last of Us, stuff like that. And that is a big selling point for them. Another point for PlayStation is, of course, it's kind of PlayStation. I don't know what the best way, but it's PlayStation Plus here. It is its competitor to Game Pass, I guess. It's also its online service, so you can still play online games. You can still have a monthly kind of library of games that you get access to, kind of like Game Pass. So it still does eventually. It eventually did do kind of what Xbox did, as well as it also does now have some backwards compatibility if you have a disk drive version of the PlayStation 5. There is some backwards compatibility now. So if you have a PlayStation 4 game, you can kind of put that into a disk drive and play a lot of them. It's not quite as expansive, it seems, as Xbox, but it's still there, and it's a functionality that I assume is going to be expanded on in the future. And another thing, the last category where I think PlayStation kind of has a leg up right now on Xbox is kind of the accessories category. This is something I've actually done some videos on, but as far as the accessories go, I think PlayStation kind of has them beat, at least at the moment. Their PlayStation Portal, their Pulse Elite, first party headsets, which we'll get into, Xbox kind of has their own thing, but doesn't seem to be as impactful for some reason. They've got PlayStation VR, which is weirdly left out of the accessories category for whatever reason. But they have their own VR, like first party VR headset, which is really cool. Their controllers are fantastic with the new wider kind of body of them, as you can see here. I really like them. The haptic feedback is probably the best on any controller I've ever had. The trackpad is a really cool gimmick. The fact that it's a built-in microphone and audio receiver is fantastic. It's really cool. It's a little cool gimmick there. I personally love it. But yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of cool accessories and ecosystem that Sony has built up around the PlayStation 5. That's really nice. And that's something that Xbox hasn't really exploited, I guess you could say, to the kind of same degree here. Yeah, that's another place where I think PlayStation kind of does a better job than Microsoft. Then going to the Series X, the obvious point where Xbox has a kind of leg up on, on Sony here is obviously Game Pass. I don't really see it in here, but regardless, Game Pass honestly is probably the best deal in gaming, in my opinion. It is a fantastic, for anywhere from $9 all the way up to $20 for Ultimate a month. You can get access to just an ungodly large and good quality library of games and online play, of course, and a few other features like PC and cloud streaming and stuff, and now VR, even if you have a Meta Quest 3. It is just, Game Pass simply is by far, as far as gaming subscriptions go, far and away, in my opinion, the best service that has ever been offered. It is fantastic. And if you're not a lot of person who has a lot of their own games or doesn't like to buy a ton of their own games, because at the end of the day, most of them are $6 or $7 for AAA games, even on sale and stuff. There's a lot of variance there, but regardless, it can be a lot of money over time for games that you kind of just have there. And a lot of people don't like that. It is a fantastic deal. That is, in my opinion, Xbox is, apart from just the hardware options of like, oh, well, we have a cheaper console or the Series X is more powerful than the base PS5. This is their second or like other big selling point is Game Pass is a tremendous deal, especially with the studios they've recently bought. Xbox is just tremendous when it gives you the value proposition and Game Pass. This stuff like Indiana Jones comes immediately to the Game Pass for you to play without having to buy. You have stuff like Black Ops 6, which is, again, right on the Game Pass day one launch, so you don't have to buy. I heard, as far as BO6 go, I heard an astonishing amount of their players only have and play the game because they have Game Pass, which just goes to show the testament and the power of the subscription service. It makes up a large chunk of BO6 player base, makes this game into more of a success than a lot of past CODs that it would have been probably without Game Pass. And it's just, with the recent purchases of Bethesda and Activision Blizzard, the game library isn't just massive, it is good quality. A lot of games on here that you can play on Game Pass or just on Xbox in general these days, because of all the studios they have and how much work they put into Game Pass, is just a tremendous deal and service. That is, in my opinion, by far the best deal. You can literally get a $300 pretty well performing console that's easy to travel with and get Game Pass and literally be set right off the bat, super simple, super easy, immediately. It's about as stress-free and as simple and as cheap as gaming can get on Xbox. It is a fantastic deal, and that is their biggest selling point. Of course, like Sony, they do have some accessories here. If you look at Apple accessories, they do have, of course, their controller, which Xbox controllers have always kind of been the industry standard. Their ergonomics and their overall design has always been top of the industry, in my opinion. The one part where they fall short of Sony, in my opinion, is the haptics. The haptics aren't quite as good as the PlayStation's kind of haptics and feedback there. But regardless, the overall ergonomics and design is good. They do, like Sony, have first-party audio, as you can see here with the wireless headset. I believe there's a wired headset as well, but something like this. They do have their own first-party kind of integrated dongled headset here, kind of similar to what Sony is offering essentially. I haven't heard as much about this and heard as much, hype about this as Sony's Pulse Elite and their little earbuds that they're selling now. Maybe it's because this is older, or they don't have earbuds and don't do as much with it as Sony. But regardless, it is still there, and it is still fairly good for a first-party audio solution. And of course, since Xbox has more to do with Microsoft and Windows, using this on PC, I assume, would also be a little more integrated than using PlayStation 5 Pulse Elite wireless headsets. But regardless, the accessories, in my opinion at least, really aren't as good as PlayStation. Again, I like the haptic feedback in the controllers. I like their first-party audio a little better. They have the PlayStation 5 Portal, which is a great little kind of feature there of HD camera too, I guess. But the PlayStation 5 Portal is a great little kind of mobile gaming solution, whether it's streaming games. It's not perfect, but I think there's a market for it for a lot of boyfriends and dads particularly. It's a great accessory to have, and of course, the PlayStation 5 has it has a built-in VR first-party headset, which is something Xbox doesn't have, even though it is starting to dip its toes into VR a little more by offering cloud streaming to VR and stuff like that, but they don't have a first party fucking VR headset as an accessory, which is something Sony does have, which is a fantastic headset if you saw my review of it, especially if you already have a PS5. It's a fantastic ecosystem that really gives kind of a run for its money as far as, everything there that Xbox has, and it really kind of beats it out in a lot of ways here. PlayStation 5 is just a tremendous ecosystem. So yeah, that's kind of what both kind of bring to the table here. As far as comparisons here, I'd say the use cases, the buy cases for do I go PlayStation or do I go Xbox, just particularly for this generation, I think, and it's hard again, if you look at the sales, PlayStation 5 has really kind of doubled from what I imagine, or from what I remember, of the amount of sales the Series X and S has had. But regardless, as far as what I'd recommend here, a few things to take into consideration as to who would buy which device, if you can't buy both, of course, and, kind of what the cases are here for these people. And I'd really say here, go. Another pertinent thing is to consider is go where your friends are. Go where your family is. If you have friends and family that all play on PlayStation, don't go Xbox. There's some compatibility, of course, but don't go Xbox, and then vice versa. If all of your friends or buddies and families on Xbox, don't go PlayStation. Play where your group and where your life is at here. That's one consideration to make. Past that, in my opinion, for this generation in particular, it kind of depends on what you're looking for out of a console here, in my opinion. If you're looking to be only a console gamer, if you're looking for the best experiences, the cutting edge tech, and honestly the best performance and best ecosystem, I think it's hard not to go with PlayStation. Not only do they have an amazing console setup here, very powerful console options that are pretty good here. Great controllers this generation, reasonable prices outside of the Pro, of course, but for their main flagship console. It performs very well. It plays all the games you want it to. It still has stuff like PlayStation Plus, which kind of is a competitor to Game Pass these days. It has amazing catalog of games on its store. Its first-party games are really what sells it for me. You can't play them on Xbox. Stuff like Helldivers 2, God of War, Spider-Man, The Last of Us, Horizon Zero Dawn series. Those are games everybody should play. They're fantastic games, and they're only available on PlayStation 5 console and not on Xbox. I think if you're looking for the best experiences and the best first-party ecosystem, I think Sony kind of offers that for you, especially if price isn't a consideration. Sony just offers that for you. On top of that, their accessories, their first-party audio, their handheld streaming game devices, their fucking VR headset. It offers the best, coolest, newest experiences that tech can offer. And I just think that's kind of, for that use case, I think for a lot of, I guess you could say hardcore gamers, I guess, whatever that means. But also just kind of wanting to push the envelope there. I think that's really kind of where you'd want to go with that, personally speaking. But what's the case? What's the selling point? What's the case here for Xbox and their console here? I think the biggest selling point here, again, like I said, is Game Pass. I think the type of person who would go Xbox, well, that's Series X or Series S, is a person who doesn't maybe game as much or doesn't want to buy a ton of games or has a lot of backwards compatibility games from past Xbox generations. That's who I think should go Xbox here. Again, Game Pass is just such a good deal. I think it's by far the best deal as far as gaming subscription services go. If you want a more relaxed, a more casual experience, it's easier to just buy a PlayStation or buy an Xbox, get Game Pass, and just, play an infinite amount of games that will keep you entertained for, the entire generation, essentially. And you can play them at a, powerful and good resolution and power here. It's a lot more casual. Again, you can get the Series S. For people who want to save money, you can want to get in as cheap as possible. If you don't play a ton of games or you don't want to fuss around with all these extra accessories that PlayStation offers, or doesn't want to, buy an entire catalog of first party games, Xbox is a very compelling choice. It's a great ecosystem to be on still. It's got a lot of cool things coming, I'm sure, in the future. It's a great selling point for people who don't want to spend as much money, want Game Pass as a service because it's the best place and best deal to play games at a pretty affordable and reasonable price, and have a lot of cool extra features given to it. Um, I think it's also an interesting kind of functionality here. If you're it's got a lot of great support for it. It's got a lot of good first party games that are coming to Game Pass now with the again, Xbox buys up a lot of studios. Stuff like Bethesda, stuff like Activision Blizzard is going to be first party games on Game Pass day one. That's a lot of great games. The Elder Scrolls, the Fallout series. You got Diablo, you got Call of Duty now, you've got fucking World of Warcraft, technically speaking, I guess. Stuff like that. I mean, it's a great ecosystem to play on, especially if your friends are on there and family are on there. Again, that's a big consideration, of course, as well. It's got the more portable, it's got the cheaper console. It's got, as far as mainline, one-to-one comparison goes there, it's got the more powerful console over the PlayStation 5 with the X. It's a compelling point there. So yeah, again, I can rattle off all these facts and figures and opinions here, but again, at the end of the day, it is opinionated, it is person to person. I just wanted to kind of showcase, give my thoughts on this, showcase what they have to offer, and kind of what the two differences are here, and what they both do and offer and bring to the table here for you guys. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Leave down below in the comments what you think on this, if you have any questions on it, if you're a PlayStation or Xbox guy, or which you're leaning towards, and stuff like that. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and the content of the channel as a whole. If you do, please consider liking and subscribing. Really helps out the channel and helps me grow. And I've really appreciated all the support since I've been back here. Can't thank you guys enough for that. And yeah, hope you guys have a great little end to your weekend here. And I'll catch you in the next video.